Hey everyone, Computex 2026 just wrapped up and there's now even more products out there that promise that they're going to finally fix 12V power. Or at least they're going to work around the design flaws of this really bad connector. Plus, we finally have Seasonic OptiGuard, which was announced over a year ago and then Seasonic just went quiet, but there's actually loads of news about that. And also Corsair's new line of PSUs with PinProtect and PinProtect Plus. So in this video I wanted to talk about all of the news that I've seen from Computex 2026 and all the products that might actually fix 12V power. And the first product I wanted to talk about is from MSI, so it's a new RTX 5090 SUPRIM, and they've actually done what Astral have done, you know, the ASUS ROG Astral, which has actually real-time monitoring of the pins. So this is the 5090 SUPRIM. Unfortunately, it's not going to exist on any of the, cheaper cards like the 5080 or the 5070 Ti, but basically MSI have actually added power monitoring into some of their PSUs, which I've covered in other videos, but now they're going to actually extend that and actually have, sense monitoring on the GPU itself. And if things, get to a bad state because of melting or anything else, then basically a lower GPU power profile can be applied. And in theory, that sounds really good, and it's similar to what the ROG Astral card actually does, because being able to see in real time whether an individual pin might be melting or something is really, really useful. But obviously the downside here is this is only on the 5090, and right now we don't actually have the full specs or the retail pricing or anything else, and I'm going to assume this is going to be a really expensive GPU. And to be honest, nowadays, there's other options out there. There's more and more PSUs and cables that actually have protection built in, which we'll look at next. Because in Computex 2026, Corsair released a bunch of new power supply units, including this crystal one that looks really, really nice, and basically they have something built in called PinProtect and also PinProtect Plus. And this is basically similar to what MSI is doing, where on some of their PSUs, they've actually got like Safeguard and Safeguard Plus, and Corsair, haven't copied that, but Corsair are doing their own thing. So basically on their cheaper PSU, which is going to be the RM 1200 watt, but basically on that PSU, it's going to have something called PinProtect, and I'll put all of the details of this down in the description, but essentially PinProtect is going to have overcurrent protection built in, so on a per pin basis, the Corsair PSU is actually going to be monitoring things, and if there's an imbalance, it can then actually shut down the system, or to be more accurate, what's going to happen is it's going to shut down the power through that 12V power cable, so essentially the GPU is going to stop working and the display will go blank, and then the PSU fans will also kick into 100%. It mentions it down here somewhere, so yeah, the PSU fans will run at 100%, and obviously as a user, if you're using your 5090 or whatever, maxing it out, and all of a sudden your display turns off and your PSU fans are at 100%, then something bad is going to happen, and then you can obviously shut down and, look at the cable and reseat it and everything else, or buy a new cable if needed. But that's, one thing is this PinProtect, and you also get this dual color, 12V power cable, just so you can see it is fully inserted. And that should actually work quite well, but if you are somebody who likes actually seeing that extra data as well, you're going to need to spend a bit more money, and that is where PinProtect Plus comes in. So what Corsair are doing is actually bundling extra information into the Corsair IQ software, and you don't need, to have the full sort of IQ software suite. You could just have this PSU, but basically you'd get this PSU, download the Corsair IQ software, and then it's going to give you this per pin monitoring and things like that. So you can see it there, it's actually going to show, what the pins are, and if there's an imbalance, it's then actually going to kick in this Pin Protection Plus, and then it's going to shut down the system in around 30 seconds if needed. The downside though is that right now, basically there's only one PSU that will have this, and it's not yet available to buy, but the PSU is this new one. So the HX1000i, which looks absolutely stunning. It's got this crystal effect so you can actually see inside the PSU, and yeah, it looks really, really nice. And we don't know exactly when this is going to be coming out, but it's rumoured to be in around 3 to 6 months from the time of filming. And the next product I wanted to cover isn't like a full-blown 12V power melting solution, but I still thought it was pretty cool, so I wanted to cover it quickly. It's from EZDIY-FAB, and basically they got two new products. So one of them is this 12V power cable that looks like a fake water tube, and it looks pretty cool. Obviously it's right angled, so yeah, it just looks pretty good and it's quite easy to insert. But the other thing that was actually noticed is they've unveiled this new product, which you can't yet buy, but hopefully it'll be out in the coming months. And basically it's an adapter similar to the WireView Pro 2, which, from Thermal Grizzly, which we know works really well. But basically this particular adapter is going to show you the wattage and also the temperature of the actual connector. The downside right now though is we don't actually know anything more than that, so Unico Hardware are actually the people who noticed this and tweeted about it, but other than a single tweet I've not been able to get any information about this particular adapter, so I'm just going to move on. And I'm going to move on to Seasonic, because over a year ago, Seasonic unveiled something called OptiGuard, and they basically said that they were going to bundle loads of nice, anti-melting technology and monitoring technology into their PSUs, and then everything went really quiet. But now, finally, Seasonic are starting to roll things out and give a bit more information about, OptiGuard, and it looks really, really cool. So basically, this is the article I wanted to start with from Tech Power Up, and what they show in is that Seasonic have unveiled loads of new PSUs, especially on the server side for like AI, but basically on the client side for consumers like us, there's these new OptiGuard PSUs, starting with the Focus range, and basically it connects over Bluetooth. So basically the PSU has like Bluetooth, and that'll connect onto Bluetooth on your system. So you can see there it says Bluetooth connected, and basically the per-pin amperages are then going to be reported in OptiGuard, and it's saying whether everything is normal or whether, there's a problem, and then it can shut down your system or something else. And yeah, this looks like a really, really nice solution, to be honest. You can see here it's showing you loads of details about the temperature and the amperage of every single pin on that 12-volt power rail, or cable, not necessarily rail, but you can see all of the details there, and then obviously, you can be able to monitor things and tweak things, and it will shut down your system if there's a problem. And we don't know exactly when these are coming out, but the fact they've actually now shown off this PSU and shown a demo would suggest that hopefully this is going to come out this year. But hopefully we don't need to wait till next year. And the reason I say that is basically Seasonic have teamed up with Noctua to release this really cool looking PSU, and on there it actually does have OptiGuard technology built into it. However, the downside is this isn't due until Q2 of next year, so basically another 12 months. So if you wanted this Seasonic Noctua PSU with the OptiGuard technology, you're going to need to wait another year. And the next thing I wanted to cover isn't something that is going to save us straight away, but it's quite cool to see some level of innovation, so I just wanted to spend 1 minute geeking out about it. But basically, ASUS done an RTX 5090 demo where they basically modded the PCB and the power delivery, and what they did is instead of the 12-volt power cable delivering 12 volts, as per its name of course, they actually modded it to deliver 48 volts, which might seem like a weird thing, like surely that's 4 times as much power, but the idea here is if it's 48 volts and not 12 volts, then it's going to be less current because of the actual formula, right? So basically each individual wire, and there's 6 of them, they're going to deliver less current because the voltage is higher, and in the process that could actually cut down on the chance of melting and things like that. And in fact, in this particular demo, the GPU was modded to use 1000 watts, but the per-pin amperage was only like 3.5 amps, then going up to 3.7 amps, which is really, really tiny because of, it being 48 volts and not 12 volts. The downside here though is, consumer systems are all 12-volt power based, so PSUs give out power on a 12-volt power rail, and as a result, unless we got brand new graphics cards and PSUs that were both modded for 48 volts, then, this isn't actually going to work. But I think it's still pretty cool that ASUS are playing around with things like this, because if GPUs keep getting more and more power hungry, then maybe we need to look at something more than, just having PSUs with a 12-volt power rail and nothing else. The next product I wanted to cover is XPG, who have a new PSU out, and XPG don't sell in every single market around the world, but basically if you can buy an XPG power supply unit, then basically what they've shown off is they've got this new technology where the PSU has bundled, monitoring and things like that, same as MSI and Corsair have been bringing out, and basically they call in this Extreme Power Guard, and you can see here it gives you like your per-pin amperage, and then you can actually, change the notification and the alarm and everything else, and it's also got thermal control built in. So you can see there is Power Guard for the, amperage, and then you've got thermal control as well, and then you've got logging for history and things like that. And yeah, this Hardware Busters video shows it off in a lot of detail, so I'll link to that down in the description, but this will be in the XPG Cybercore 3 1200 watt model. And next up we've got ASRock, who have unveiled loads of new PSUs and everything else, and some of them actually come with, better technology. So the first is the ASRock Steel Legend series, and they go from 850 watts up to 1200 watts. And the cables that come with these particular PSUs have built-in thermal protection, a bit like how Corsair have done, the thermal protect cables. ASRock have done something very similar, and this isn't necessarily new, although I think these are new for, Computex 2026, but I think ASRock did similar last year as well. But essentially what you're going to get is where you've got the 12-volt power thing, you can see it there. There's actually an extra thing you plug in, so you can see that there and you can see that there, and basically that's a thermal sensor. So when you plug in the 12-volt power cable in, you're also going to plug in that other header, which is a thermistor or, a temperature sensor, and basically if there's a problem where the GPU is pumping out too much power and you've got a problem with the pins and that's starting to drive up temperatures and could potentially melt, then this temperature sensor can actually speak to the PSU and then cut off the power. So that's the idea behind this ASRock Steel Legend series PSU. And next up then you've got the ASRock Phantom Gaming series, and again it's a very similar thing. So the 12-volt power cable has thermal diodes in both ends, and if there's overheating then it'll trip and cut off power to the graphics card, and then suddenly, your display will go blank and things like that. And also the ASRock Tachi, which is their higher end ones, and usually the PSU wattage is a lot higher with those, but basically they've also got similar, so they've got the temperature guard stuff built in as well. So basically ASRock are, refreshing their PSU lineup so that soon, whether you buy the Steel Legend one or the Phantom Gaming one or the Tachi one, it's going to have this thermal guard built in. And obviously thermal protection isn't necessarily as good as having that per-pin monitoring, or at least, that's what like WireView Pro 2 would argue, because they've got the per-pin monitoring. But from my own perspective, I've tested the Corsair thermal protect cable, which is a very similar idea to this, and actually I think it can work really, really well. And the next product I wanted to cover is from Benchlab, which is more of a benchmarking tool, so if you're just doing like a normal computer build, this might not be as suitable for you, but I'll quickly cover it, just in case you're into your benchmarking and things like that. But this is actually a Benchlab, so it's a particular board where you can plug everything in, like your, ATX 24-pin header and your GPU and things like that, and then it's going to give you a load of extra data and telemetry and things like that. But the thing that actually sets this apart is in the past, Benchlab only worked with like open air builds and things like that, but Benchlab version 2, which is coming out imminently, now actually is supported in Corsair frame cases with a custom adapter and things like that. And the good thing with that is it's got advanced per-pin monitoring and also an audible buzzer for 12-volt power. And again, you're not going to actually, buy this as a replacement for a motherboard, because this is more for benchmarking and getting extra data. But if you are into your hacking and testing and playing around, and you do like Benchlab, then at least now you know that their new version will have extra 12-volt power protection. And finally, we come to CoolerMaster, because they've done what MSI and Corsair and Seasonic have done, and they've actually upgraded their PSUs to have a new line of PSUs that actually have built-in 12-volt power, monitoring and things like that. And Gamers Next has done a really good video about this a few days ago, so again I'll link to that down in the description. But essentially in this video you can see they've got their new PSU, and it's actually got built-in light there that will actually show you if there's a problem, like you can see there, if there's a problem with balance, on the pins or anything like that, then it's going to say, hey, there's a problem, and actually audibly warn you, and then you can take extra protection and things like that. So that's a pretty cool feature, and CoolerMaster did actually talk about this in, I think, CES 2026, but then again they didn't actually unveil the product, a bit like Seasonic done last year. But now we actually have a demo that we can actually see, which would suggest that this CoolerMaster PSU is on the verge of being released, and that's actually a really cool thing. You don't just have to rely on like the WireView Pro 2, you could buy the Corsair Thermal Protect cable, or you could buy, Seasonic's new PSUs, or Corsair's new PSUs, all the ones from MSI or ASRock or CoolerMaster. There's just so many different options out there now. And it still sucks that we have to be worried about 12-volt power melting and things like that. Really, the connector needs a complete redesign, but because it's not, we have to be pragmatic, and it's really good to see that there's now probably like, 20 different options out there that you can buy, or at least buy soon, because some of these, will be coming soon, hopefully in the next few months. But the fact there's actually more choice than ever is a really good thing in my opinion, even though the general situation isn't really ideal. But let me know what you think down in the comments, and if you enjoyed this video, please click the thumbs up button, and please subscribe to see more videos like this. Thanks for watching.